We also have some fresh Fed speak just crossing the tape. Let's get over to Steve Liesman with that. Steve.
Hey, Fed Vice Chair Philip Jefferson saying it will likely be appropriate to reduce the monetary policy restraint, quote, later this year. Not a lot of specificity, but later this year is what he says. He says the policy rate currently is well into restrictive territory. Recent data show there is a path to restoring price stability and lowering inflation without a big increase in unemployment. On the labor market, he said it remains tight, but there is some evidence of cooling in labor demand. Inflation, he says, has made clear progress, but points to what he calls a disappointing January CPI, which highlights that the process of reducing inflation is likely to be bumpy. He sees core service prices moderating as the labor market cools. Actually offers a staff estimate of the number coming out a week from Friday, which is that the PCE will fall to 2.4% from 2.6%. Does point out a bunch of risks, including the idea that consumer spending could prove more resilient, employment could weaken more than is expected, and he talks about geopolitical risks remaining elevated, creating some price pressure in that regard. There are warning signs, he says, that the economic activity can weaken quickly, but inflation can also reignite. And then he has a history of easing cycles that I think is instructive here. He says most easing cycles have multiple phases. The Fed would cut a little bit and then come back and cut some more, sometimes triggered by economic shocks. And then he points to this careful easing in the 1995 easing cycle that allowed the Fed to assess incoming data. Of all the examples he gives, it seems like the one he likes the most. He quotes Alan Blinder. There's the 95 easing cycle, guys. If that's the one, I think the market's going to be disappointed in that. Look at that, a quarter point cut in July. The Fed waited, and then came back and cut twice more. And then the next move was in 97 when it actually hiked a quarter point. So that was not a wonderful outcome if that's the one he's using as an example. But if you want to take the dovish view here, guys, he is talking about easing. Carl?